So, Erin, why is the family amendment very important to you?
From a personal point of view, because family is personal. It is time that we change in our constitution the definition of family. We know that families are complicated, families are diverse. There are thousands of families in this country that today are not recognised in our constitution. And to me, who's someone who very much respects our constitution, who thinks that we all should, I suppose, look to it and appreciate it, the fact that families like mine, who an unmarried mother in a very happy and healthy, durable relationship, I would say, is not recognised. And I think it's time that Ireland, that this country, steps forward and steps up and recognises that family is complicated. Family is diverse. It's wonderful. And it's not just based on marriage. And that's antiquated. It's old. It's old-fashioned. But also, it's unfair on so many families, really hard-working, normal, decent families all over the country.
And in your personal circumstances, from a personal point of view, is that constitutional recognition important to you that this is passed this weekend?
Absolutely, because I suppose it's a recognition that my family matters. I do think when you're listening to the debates, it's almost insulting when people are saying to say no to this referendum, to say that families who are not just that straightforward married couple, that only them are recognised by the state. And it is insulting to so many different types of families all over the country, and mine. And I hope that on Saturday evening or Sunday, whenever the results are announced, that my family, loads of other families, will be able to sit back and say, yes, this state has grown up. This state now recognises that families are diverse, are not just simple, are not just based on marriage, but marriage and other durable relations. And I think that would be a really positive step forward.
Fiona, can I ask you from your own experience what the care referendum would mean to you and the changes that are proposed in that particular amendment?
Well, I think it's important that we recognise care within the family situation. Families come in all shapes and sizes and can contain many different people who have varying needs. In my own family, I'm one of 11, but I have a brother with special needs, and he's hugely important to us. The family, I would say, is the primary caregiver. It needs to be recognised that it's more than just about the mother giving that care, and that's really what the Constitution is saying. And certainly within our family, while my mother is the primary caregiver, because my dad is no longer with us, at the same time, my brothers are quite amazing in the way that they strive to support Cathal. And I'm thinking of a family that I know as well. And it's actually a friend of Cahill's who's in the same service provider. And she was living with her mum. And as in many situations, as we know, when people with special needs get into their 40s and 50s, their parents are ageing. And unfortunately, her mum fell, and another sister is now taking care of both the mum and of this girl. And it is an issue because there's a problem in terms of recognising the carer. So I've had a lot of dealings now with social protection, and not satisfactory at the moment. But there's absolutely no reason why this girl's sister can't be recognised as a caregiver, or indeed if it was a brother. Bottom line is, when the Constitution was written 87 years ago, men were generally the breadwinners and women generally did stay at home. And as we all know about the marriage bar, where women couldn't actually go out to work. And they sacrificed a lot, both in terms of the career and in terms of the friends and the friendships that they made through work. So we have to have a gender neutral expression, I feel, within the Constitution. And we have to recognise that a woman's place is wherever she wants it to be, whether that's in the local council, the Dáil, the Seanad, cabinet, the workplace. So I for me, in a family that has a particular care need, that where my brother needs to be supported, and it's as much about him as well too. So I think it's really important that this part of the Constitution is modernised.
And the language in the Constitution about the life of woman within the home and the duties of mothers within the home, is it important to you that that language is removed from the Constitution?
As a woman, absolutely, I think it's important. I think that a woman's place should be wherever she wants it to be. Things have changed an awful lot, thankfully, in the last 87 years. We, as women, have the opportunity to work outside the home, as well as valuing the work inside the home. And when it was mooted, actually, in the last Dáil mandate, that that the Constitution should change, and the reference of a woman's place in the home should be taken out. As part of the Women's Caucus, we actually went to Cabinet and said we felt that this reference shouldn't be taken out because that might devalue care. But it was important to recognise that a woman's place is also outside the home, but that care that's given at home is valuable, that it's a value that we should recognise, appreciate and support within the Constitution. And eventually that agreement was made. So again, I think it's really important for the value of care and to support, what may come afterwards. But the first situation is that this needs to change on Thursday.
Thanks very much.
Sorry, this needs to change on Friday.
Yeah, and is the deletion of the references to the life of woman within the home and the duties of mothers in the home, is that important to you, Erin?
I think we have to look at what the Constitution has done over the past 87 years. And that phrase, the duties within the home and not to neglect those duties in the home, it didn't do anything positive for women. It didn't necessarily discriminate, but it was the origin of an awful lot of cultural attitudes towards women, where women were, if you weren't from a privileged background, if you weren't able to go to college, if you weren't able to have that facility to be educated or to go out to work, if you were only told that you leave school at 13, 14 and go and do a few years work and then get married, the lack of ambition, that cultural lack of ambition for so many women, for people like my mother, my aunt, my granny, so many people, it didn't hinder, but the cultural connotations absolutely hindered. So I think it's insulting to women to think that if you do go out to work away from your home, that you are neglecting your duties. And duty is quite a strong word when you look at it. We all have duties in the home, and Thomas, you as a father,
I do, yeah.
have duties in the home.
Unfortunately, I neglect them sometimes too. But anyway,
we all neglect those duties in the home because we have outside lives. And I think to recognise that men and women, or men and men, fathers and mothers, go outside the home, are not stuck to home all the time, which is a fact, and embrace the fact that we have a modern Ireland, that men and women stay at home, don't stay at home, and share out those really important duties. And it's I think we criticise the phrase, the bonds that exist among them. That's the phrase to put into the Constitution now. And when you pull it back, it's actually a really lovely, important phrase, because we all have bonds. And if you're in that family, we have bonds that exist between us. And by the care and the duty that we have towards each other, we deliver that care. Like Fiona's family and my family, we deliver that care very openly, very honestly, but it's ungendered. And I really hope that, again, that after the referendum, that care would be recognised as ungendered in our Constitution, because it's an insult to a lot of men throughout the country who do an awful lot of important work. And I can attest to, I can put my hands up to that in my own case, because when I'm not there, he is there. And that's replicated all around the country. So again, just to stress that duties within the home and women's duties in the home did not necessarily have a legal discrimination to hinder. It had a cultural connotation and a cultural effect on women, and all through the years and our generations. And thankfully we're coming away from it. But we need to come away from it in our Constitution. Our bottom tier of of where our legislation comes from. And we can't look back and blame the past, blame the Ireland that De Valera dreamt of, or blame the Ireland that Archbishop McQuaid dreamt of if we vote no on Friday. We can't do that. We can only blame ourselves if we choose not to modernise our constitution.
And of course, we have modernised the constitution on lots of occasions. These are the 39th and 40th proposals to amend the constitution. And Fiona, can I ask you just on the family referendum, why do you think it's important to update the language in the constitution?
There have been 32 amendments. We're the third highest country in Europe in terms of making amendments. And I think it's fantastic that the drafters of the original constitution drafted in such a way to enable the government of the day to go to the people of the country and say, does this constitution reflect where we are now? The constitution was always meant to be a living, breathing document. And as you say, here we are now with the 39th and the 40th constitution. In terms of family, I think this is absolutely vital. As we know, 43% of children born in 2023 were born outside of marriage. And there are so many other different types of family dynamics. I know a wonderful grandmother who is caring for her 5-year-old son after tragic family circumstances. And it's important that those family units are valued and respected. And I think as an Irish people, we respect the Constitution. We want it to reflect us. We want it to reflect contemporary society. And that's why it's really important that we make these changes, the proposed changes, and vote yes on Friday. There's a lot of discussion around the referendum. There's a lot of confusion, I think, Thomas. And friends of mine were saying to me at the weekend they felt that they were being lectured to. So I think it's important that we demystify a lot of the naysayers and to look at, frankly, the myths that are being put out there, which are untrue. So I'd like to ask you about that, but equally I would like to ask you about what you feel as a man, as a husband, as a dad, in terms of these proposed changes, because people are always asking us women what we think, but I'd like to know what you think.
Well, look, I think it's really important that we update the Constitution and that we modernise it. And you're right, there have been so many red herrings thrown out there. I think, quite frankly, some of them have been dealt with and then others get thrown in. So at the start of this campaign, it was about thruples and polygamy. I mean, that was knocked on the head very, very early on by the Yes campaign. But what happened? The No campaign kept coming with new fears to worry people about, for example, inheritance, immigration, all these things. In some cases, forcing mothers out to work, for example, has been thrown out there as a red herring. So there's all that there. What I urge people to do very strongly is to read the Electoral Commission literature. And don't assume it's more complicated than it seems. It actually isn't. It's actually a relatively simple proposal. And I think that each and every Irish citizen is able to read the Electoral Commission documentation. If you don't have it in paper form, it's on the website, and to understand it and to make their own judgment for it. There's no mystery to this. There's no secret meanings to it, as many on the No campaign suggests. It is simply on the family referendum to make sure that we include all the types of families that exist in Ireland, while still continuing to protect marriage, and on the care referendum to ensure that we do delete outdated language about the role of women in society, and ensure that we have a new provision about care and an obligation on the state to strive to support care within families. That's a really important obligation of the state. I mean, there is nothing there at the moment obliging the state to strive to support care within families. And that this is new, this is significant, and if it's not supported in the referendum this week, all that we'll be left with will be the outdated language and nothing about putting any obligation or onus on the state to strive to support care within families. And I think it's really, really important that all of us in society, the mothers, the women, the dads, the lads, get involved in this to make sure that we exercise our democratic right this weekend. And let's not depend on other people to tell us what to do, but rather as citizens to take on that responsibility, each of us, to read the very clear language and simple language that's been put forward by the Electoral Commission and to make our own minds up and to support these 2 referendums this weekend.
Thomas, there's been a lot of talk about the wording of the referendum, including with the durable relationships. I think that dissenters should have more faith in our justice system and our courts. However, in your opinion, in relation to the questions that people are having in relation to the succession and the effects of those of having durable relationships recognised in the Constitution, the effects of that on things like succession, on immigration as well, for example, on where will we be if this referendum is passed?
Look, the first thing to note is what we've been asked to do is to add language to the definition of a family. So at the moment, family in Ireland is defined solely as based on marriage. And what we're being asked to change is not to make another type of marriage, but rather to extend the definition of families to include other durable relationships, to encompass really all the varieties of families that are out there. And what the Referendum Commission has said, it's in the leaflet, what durable relationships are. And people should read that. And there's a lot of things out there that nobody can define it. If the term has been defined by the Referendum Commission, what they've said is that it's continuing and committed relationships. They're not marriage, and nobody's intending that this will be the same as marriage. And what's very important to remember is that the provision in the Constitution that requires the state to protect marriage and to guard it against attack, that's staying. So marriage will continue to have a special status in the Constitution. But what this is simply doing is to give recognition to families such as your own, to make sure that they have constitutional recognition. Look, on succession rights, I mean, Irish women, married women, wives, didn't really have much in the way of succession rights until the 1965 Succession Act that Fianna Fáil brought in at that time. And it was a very important piece of legislation which gave a wife a legal right share to the estate, even if she was excluded from the will. The Constitution did not give married women that right, and does not give it, because the Oireachtas decides on the laws that we have here. So I can say confidently on that basis that this amendment will have no impact whatsoever on anyone's inheritance rights, because the Oireachtas is entitled to make laws providing for inheritance rights and for succession law. In relation to immigration, I think again a lot of red herrings thrown around about that. I'm not entirely clear what exactly people are saying about immigration. They're saying there's more people going to be allowed in, there's more people not going to be allowed in. That's never been made clear. Simply the word has been thrown out there. This creates huge uncertainty. It does not, because already even the spouse, a non-EU spouse of an Irish citizen, in the last number of years has been deported. There are also cases, on the other hand, where a non-EU partner of an EU citizen can in some cases have rights here. This is already under Irish law. And this provision will not change that one iota, but instead will give legitimacy and constitutional recognition to families in Ireland that aren't based on marriage. It's really important that everybody gets out to vote this Friday. It is our constitution, it's the people's constitution, and I think that the proposals that the government is putting forward this weekend are strong proposals to modernise and update the constitution, to include more people in the constitution, and to include a strong requirement on the state to strive to support care within families.
So I really hope that people will show up on Friday to change the constitution. It is a huge opportunity. It's a huge privilege to be able to vote on your constitution. Not everybody gets that. Not every nation does this. And to be able to have a voice, to change your constitution, to modernise it, to make sure that it reflects our people, I really hope that people show up and turn out to vote yes on Friday.
Decisions are made by people who turn up and by those who turn out to vote. So I'd like to encourage everybody to come out and vote on Friday. It's really, really important. This is about your sisters, your brothers. It's about our families, our neighbours, our work colleagues. We all need people to stand up for us, and we need to have the recognition of other families other than those defined by marriage, and we need to define care in our constitution on Friday.